London, May 19th, 1536. Betrayed by the king she loved, the allies she trusted, and the court she dazzled, Anne Boleyn faced her final dawn, who had woven the web that led a queen to the scaffold. Under a grey sky, the Tower of London stood silent, its walls hiding the secrets of her fall. A pale wooden scaffold built low for a French swordsman's blade, not an English axe, awaited her. Today, for the first time in England's history, a queen would die. The air was thick, heavy with unease. Men and women huddled against the morning chill, strained to see. Their whispers mixed awe with fear. Anne, once the flame that sparked Henry VIII's obsession, was now a prisoner, her name steeped in scandal. Yet in that fleeting moment before the drums rolled, the tower seemed to pause. As if it sensed the weight of what was coming, inside the tower's cold walls, Anne Boleyn woke to her last day. At 35, she still carried the grace that had charmed a king, though her face bore the toll of 17 days in a cramped cell. Her ladies-in-waiting, the few who stayed loyal, moved quietly. Their eyes were red from tears they dared not shed. Anne, ever deliberate, chose her outfit carefully. A dark gray mantle lined with fur, a crimson bodice beneath. Colors that would hide blood. A choice both practical and proud. "I hear the executioner is very good," she said, her voice calm, a faint smile on her lips. Then, touching her throat, she added, "I have a little neck." Those words, noted by witnesses, were not just brave. They held a dark, sharp irony, as if Anne could taunt death itself. Her ladies froze, torn between admiration and grief. In that small room with the scaffold's shadow looming, Anne Boleyn was still a queen. Her spirit unbroken. How had it come to this? Anne's story began far from the tower's grim walls. Born to Thomas Boleyn, an ambitious diplomat, and Elizabeth Howard, a noblewoman of old lineage, Anne was no ordinary courtier. As a girl, she was sent to the French court, a vibrant world of Renaissance ideas. There she absorbed art music and the quick wit that would shape her. When she returned to England around 1522, she was a woman who turned heads. Not for classic beauty with her olive skin and dark eyes, but for a presence that drew people like moths to a flame. She was not the fair, golden-haired ideal of the day. Yet her intelligence, her mastery of languages, her elegance in dance and conversation, these were her true weapons. When Henry VIII, frustrated by his childless marriage to Catherine of Aragon, first noticed Anne, she saw opportunity where others saw peril. Her sister Mary Boleyn had been the king's mistress, a role that ended in shame. Anne would not follow. "I will not be your concubine," she reportedly told Henry, her voice firm. "If you want me, give me a crown, a bold gamble, one that would reshape a nation." For 7 years, from 1526 to 1533, Henry chased Anne with a passion bordering on madness. To marry her, he defied the Pope, severed England's ties with the Catholic Church, and declared himself supreme head of the Church of England. The kingdom shook under the weight of his desire. Popes, emperors, and nobles protested, but Henry stood firm. In January 1533, with Anne already pregnant, they wed in secret, a union that rocked Europe. That September, Anne gave birth. Not to the son Henry craved, but to a daughter, Elizabeth. The king's disappointment was clear, yet Anne's influence grew. She was no quiet queen. Brilliant and daring, she championed religious reforms, supported scholars, and pushed for English translations of the Bible. A bold move in a Catholic world. To her allies, she was a visionary, a beacon of change. To her enemies, and they were many, she was a heretic, a manipulator who had bewitched the king. Her crown was both her victory and her curse. Anne's reign, though brief, burned brightly. But by 1534 cracks appeared. A miscarriage that year, then another in 1535, a male fetus crushed Henry's waning affection. For a king obsessed with a male heir to secure his dynasty, these losses were unforgivable. As Henry's eyes turned to Jane Seymour, a gentle, obedient courtier, Anne's enemies sensed weakness. Chief among them was Thomas Cromwell, the king's ruthless minister, who saw Anne as a threat to his power. In April 1536, Cromwell struck. He spun a web of accusations so shocking they stunned even the jaded court. Adultery with 5 men, including her own brother George Boleyn. Conspiracy to kill the king. Treason. On May 2nd, Anne was arrested and taken to the Tower. Her trial, held on May 15th, was a sham. Facing a panel of her enemies denied a lawyer or the right to face her accusers, she defended herself with such eloquence that one witness marveled. She seemed not a woman, but an angel. It changed nothing. The verdict was set before the trial began. Guilty. Death. That gray morning in 1536, at 8 o'clock, Anne faced a blow almost as cruel as the sword awaiting her. The execution was delayed until noon. She had braced herself for death, and now she had to wait. The hours dragged like a punishment of their own. In her cell she turned to prayer, taking communion with a fervor that hushed her ladies. "Lord, have mercy on me," she whispered, pausing to swear on the sacred host. "For my salvation, I am free of the crimes for which I am condemned." As noon neared, she said goodbye to her ladies, gave each a small token, a prayer book, a handkerchief, a piece of jewelry. "Remember me and how I end," she said, her voice soft but resolute. The drums began to roll, a low, ominous beat echoing through the tower. Anne stood, smoothed her mantle, and prepared to step into history. Her final act would be one of grace, not surrender. At noon, Anne walked into the courtyard. Her gray and crimson outfit stood out against the pale scaffold. The crowd, about 1,000 strong, was smaller than expected, their mood oddly reverent. Many removed their hats as she approached, a sign of respect for the woman who had once been their queen. Anne climbed the scaffold with the same dignity that had defined her life. Her steps steady, her face calm. She was allowed a final speech, and her words were masterful. "Good Christians, I come here to die according to the law, and I will speak nothing against it," she began, her voice clear. "I pray God save the king, for a gentler, more merciful prince was there never. To me he was ever a good and sovereign lord." She accused no one, claimed no innocence. A calculated choice, protecting the crown's honor and shielding her daughter Elizabeth from future harm. The crowd stood silent. Some wiped tears. Anne removed her mantle and cap, handing them to her ladies, who now wept openly. In a final gesture of courtesy, she gave the executioner a purse of gold coins, payment for a clean strike. Kneeling on the scaffold, she noticed there was no block, as was usual for an axe. The French method required her to stay upright, a test of courage even for the bold. One of her ladies tied a blindfold over her eyes. Anne's lips moved in prayer. "Jesus, receive my soul." The executioner, skilled in mercy as well as precision, used a subtle trick. "Where is my sword?" he called, though the blade was already in place. Anne turned her head slightly. In that instant the sword flashed. A single brutal stroke severed her slender neck. Her head fell to the scaffold with a soft thud. Silence gripped the crowd, broken only by a shared sigh. The executioner lifted her head, declaring, "So perish the king's enemies." But no cheers followed. Only an uneasy murmur. Minutes later, cannons roared across the Thames, a signal to Henry VIII, waiting at Whitehall Palace, that he was free. Free to marry Jane Seymour, with whom he was engaged the next day. Wed 10 days later. Anne's body, meanwhile, got no such dignity. Her ladies, forced to improvise, placed her remains head beside torso in an empty arrow chest. A cruel insult for a former queen. Carried to the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula within the tower, she was buried beneath the stone floor. No marker, no ceremony. Henry ordered Anne's memory erased. Portraits were destroyed, her emblems stripped from palaces, her name struck from records. This attempt to wipe her from history was meant to be final. Yet even in death, Anne defied him. Her blood flowed through Elizabeth, the daughter Henry dismissed who would one day take the throne, and outshine her father in every way. 23 years later, in 1558, Elizabeth I became queen. Her reign, lasting 45 years, was a golden age of stability, exploration, and cultural growth. A direct answer to Henry's obsession with a male heir. Elizabeth, with her mother's sharp mind and fierce independence, embraced Anne's legacy. She adopted the white falcon, the Boleyn emblem, and learning from her mother's fate, declared herself married to England, never taking a husband. Anne's sacrifice, born of tragedy, forged a queen who would redefine a nation. In 1876, during a restoration of St. Peter ad Vincula, bones were found where Anne was thought to rest. A delicate female skeleton with a small skull was reburied with the honor she had been denied. Today, a simple glass slab marks the spot of her execution. Each May 19th, admirers lay roses there. Anne Boleyn, once vilified, is now a symbol, not just of tragedy, but of resilience. Looking back, Anne Boleyn is more than a historical note. She is a reminder of the price women paid for ambition, for daring to hold power in a world not ready. Her trial was a farce, her death a spectacle, yet she faced it with a grace that still takes your breath away. The irony is clear. Henry tried to erase her, but through Elizabeth Anne's vision shaped England's future. The roses at the Tower, the falcon on Elizabeth's crest. These are proof of a woman who refused to be forgotten. That gray morning in 1536, when Anne stepped onto the scaffold, she did not just meet her end, she planted a seed. Elizabeth, the daughter seen as a failure, grew into a queen who carried her mother's fire. Anne's story, soaked in betrayal and courage, speaks to anyone who has faced impossible odds. Under the Tower's gray sky, a queen fell, but her legacy soared.